In my opinion, gender is the one of the most prominent signifier of our identity. And more often than not, we take it for granted. So we take it for granted that we are either born or as a man or a woman or as the other. Now, understanding gender, and in my view, it's really all encompassive in the sense that gender influences everything that we do.
Very broadly, there are in the people who are in the field of gender are broadly divided into two broad categories. One are called the constructivists, and the other are called the essentialists. The essentialists believe that there are some very basic differences between a man and a woman. The constructivists believe that there are no such things. All differences between men and women are socially constructed. So, I think in the perspective with which this lab is held, it does not take either of the two positions. It takes the position that there are bioexistential imperatives of being a man and a woman. And there are socio-cultural messages which we receive about what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman. And eventually it's an interplay between the two. In a lab setting, for instance, what you deal with are really three things. One is the messages which an individual may have received about what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman. The second are the socio-cultural messages, and the third are the bioexistential imperatives. And the three are not always, aligned to each other. Very simply, broad cultural message may be that men are supposed to be aggressive and women are supposed to be empathetic, whereas the person's experience may be totally contrary to it. So all the things may not always align. So a lab is essentially the setting where you can look at all these three.
So one of the things that I want to make clear is that my focus is much more to work with gender and identity and not so much gendered identity. I think there's a two different gender and identities. One is understanding of gender, my own perspective of, as you would have heard with the interview with Ashok, that we are both masculine and feminine. We are both men and women, even biologically so. And if you don't understand this aspect of ours, that we are both masculine and feminine, and there's a certain configuration that we all have internally, and therefore it shapes our opinions, our views, our role taking, everything. It becomes very difficult, and one gets stuck with a very specific gendered kind of a role. The way I would look at identity is, who am I? What's my idea of who am I?
That's a tough question, right? When I went in for the lab, I went in with certain ideas of what is gender, and tried to kind of. I think the lab just opened out my mind in terms of understanding. Okay, there's a biological role that we all have, so male and female, but also there is much more in terms of the aspects and attributes that we bring in, and that both male and female characteristics exist in each of us. So for me, that came through very, very clearly.
Okay, I think one of the concepts that I found very powerful was this whole idea about the oppressor not being out there, that the oppressor is actually within. And the more I'm able to integrate these different parts of myself, the masculine side, the feminine side, and all of what all of these different aspects entail in terms of my mind, whether it's good or bad. And the more I'm able to wholly integrate that, the less I become a victim. So that for me was very powerful.
Do we need to talk about gender in today's context? I think it's extremely important. I think our culture is going through a tremendous transformation, and a lot of the frames are going through, I think, very rapid and phenomenal change. And with more and more people getting into the work, women coming into the work context, I think there's a very big need for this kind of labs. to not only understand what's going on out there, all the newspaper reportage, etc., but also where does it leave me and how do I experience being a man and what do I do to women in the process of my. I don't think we ever think of this. We are caught with the newspaper reportage and all this issue of violence against women and all of that, but I think it's more than just that. It's more about also understanding that in our day-to-day lives, um, this gender interaction and how we interact from where we interact is, I think, critical.
Talking about gender in today's context has become um, quite critical because I think that in the different environments, in the different contexts that we work in, much as we would like to believe that we are trying to create gender neutral environments, um, gender issues do keep playing pretty much in the background. And when they surface or when they're sort of brought up, there is discomfort on both the men and the women's side to be able to deal with it, to acknowledge it, and they do tend to cause a certain amount of disruption as well. So understanding it, acknowledging it, I think in today's context is very important.
In workspace, if I look at the way we interface, the way we look at even the workspace in various forms, various constituents, right? The way we look at our peer group, our relationships, right? Working relationship which has the human element. So I think it's pretty relevant. So for that aspect is concerned, the interface part especially.
And today in the corporate world, everyone is talking about gender and diversity and those kind of issues. Unless we get down to some of the basic, questions and basic concepts and understand those, I don't see any real shifts happening. So I think this is extremely important from that perspective.
And having worked with women for a long time, I've also realized that there are new kinds of conflicts at home as the structure of family itself is changing. So the fabric of the family, the fabric of the workplace, the fabric of public spaces are all undergoing tremendous change. And in understanding these changes, gender is one of the most important lenses that we need to use. Apart from understanding class, caste, religion, urbanization, globalization, etc. But in all those as well, how gender is manifesting is an important insight that we need in our civilizational journey. So to me, talking about gender at this context of time in Indian society is very, very important.
The wholeness of life, the bigger picture, the how we relate to each other, the richness of it, the liberation, the freedom, the creativity doesn't come into being if there is no synchrony between the two, and there is some level of excitement, and there's a whole new dimension that is added to life. So I think it is extremely important to get to unearth that capability between the two.
Relevant according to me is that masculinity and femininity exists in all of us. The problem is that we don't necessarily acknowledge both the elements in us, and also in the process we hold stereotypes, and also in the process we hold distortions of both of these elements in us. And this lack of alignment and balance is something which actually throws us off gear. It doesn't allow us to exist in a whole and a balanced form. So this is what I felt that the lab allowed one to experience and get in touch with.
I think if we also want to make a society which is a little more gender sensitive, let's say for the next generation, then it does become important for us to start addressing these issues, talking about these issues, creating sensitivity around us. So if we are aware, then it's easier for us to also create that sensitivity for our next generation.
I must also say that this has been a phenomenal group.
Yes.
So a lot of the power of this lab has been my co-travelers,
That's true.
and I think I've made some friends. So, and these are friends who are on the same journey, in a sense. So, I hope that will make it more meaningful as we